Okay. I'll just kind of jump right in. So I saw one of these in the AAW magazine, the American Woodturner, back in the summer. And I thought, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. Well, the thing is that I make gifts of some kind for coworkers and family, and I need about 25 gifts. And I have looked at things like pens and other things that you could make from turning that would be of interest, right, for somebody to have, that I can make like 25 of or 30. Each one can't take 3 hours, and I need to be able to mass produce stuff. And so this one kind of hit me, and I went, oh, I could do that. And so I did. This was not the full set that I made, but you can see that some of the decoration on the different units are different. I'll talk about the decoration in a little bit. I'll also talk about the tea lights, the candles, and the glass holders. I'll talk about all that. And before I show the video, because I've got, with Chris's help, we made a video, we got it in 2 segments. I got a couple things I want to explain. One is that when I was gluing up the blanks, I paid special attention to make sure that the upper portion met up with the lower portion, and that there was a piece of veneer in between, and that stuff all was nice and flat and parallel and true and all that. What I didn't pay attention to was the other side, and that actually can be a real problem. You want to make sure that both sides of the upper and lower pieces are flat and true to each other, so that they're perpendicular to the axis of rotation on the lathe. If you don't, chucking it becomes a real nightmare. And I've got some stories for you. The other is that the article talks about cutting a 2-inch hole in the top of the tea light that, to hold the glass. And the 2-inch hole holds the glass just fine. The problem is that my 2-inch jaws on my scroll chuck, they wouldn't fit into a 2-inch hole, because a 50mm hole is just a little bit bigger than 2 inches. And so I ended up having to go to 2 1/8. And that was one of those lessons learned that if you're ever going to make one of these things, you may want to take into account. The other thing is that Bill, the author, he had the person making it, or himself, right? He talked about kind of turning the unit over and over and rechucking it this way in expanding mode, and then in compression mode, and then back to expanding. And I said, that's too much work. So what I did was I did compression for all of the 3 things in the middle there. And I only did expanding to turn the tenon and expanding to part off the tenon. And other than that, it was all in compression mode on the tenon, and it worked out just fine. So as long as you're careful with your tools, you'll really be okay. But that was my experience. I do want to let you know that I will take questions. Chris will be monitoring the chat. So if you want to type a question, you can put a question into the chat. I will stop the video from in a couple places to kind of add a little bit more to the story. And there's a spot about in the middle where we'll stop and answer any questions we've gotten to so far, and then another spot for questions at the end. And I've got some things about pricing and materials and all that at the very back. And let's see if this goes. So let me start by talking about the process of getting to stock, and then we'll chuck a blank up and we'll get going. You may be wondering about the glass and the little candle. I'll explain about those later. So I started with a gunstock blade. This is, I guess, English walnut. I can never remember. And I found that if I can take a couple 4-inch squares out of the short end, I can leave myself with another piece over here to make a nice little bowl out of. So I'm starting with that. And
I took that and ran it through the drum sander, and I got it flat on both sides. And I'm going to explain in a couple minutes why flat on both sides is really a good idea, because I didn't do that for most of them, and it made it really interesting. So anyway, once you have it flat, and once you have it cut, and once you get it to 4-inch squares, 4-inch squares get you pretty far, because you can then take the small piece, I forget which kind of wood this is, I already did this one on the bandsaw, and a little piece of veneer for color separation, and a 4-inch by 2-inch walnut with the center marked and the circle for the bandsaw. And, you know, I was doing this thing kind of mass production. I would do 24 or 25 of a given thing. So I was making 25 blocks, marking 25 circles, marking 25 centers. And then once I had taken the larger piece to bandsaw and to the drill press and did the hole here, I would then go through 25 sets of glue up, and I would chuck this and put this on and spread the glue and use a piece of wood against the tailstock and use it to hold this thing flat, because otherwise the veneer would want to curl, right? And then I'd go ahead and put this one on and, you know, get the centering right. And if amazingly everything was in fact centered, then this line, this dot, would be centered with that there from the drill press, but I'm never that good. So they always ended up kind of like this, where you've got a reasonably centered hole, a reasonably centered bottom piece, and you can see that the outer piece here, the veneer, is reasonably centered, since it's got to be the blended in anyway. It won't matter much. So let me show you back here the bottom. Which camera's active? I'm bringing in the right view on this one. Okay. So here you can see that the veneer, pardon our airplanes, the veneer is larger than the bottom piece and will have to be blended. And the veneer here just presents a little bit of an accent. But we'll get from here to here along the way. All right? All right. So one of the things I found is that 2-inch jaws aren't 2-inch. They're 50 millimeters. And 50 millimeters is just a little bit bigger than 2 inches. And why is that important? It's because a 2-inch Forstner bit hole cut in the blank will not fit on a 50 millimeter chuck. Learn that one the hard way. So I had to go to 2 1/8-inch Forstner bit in order to be able to chuck this up. So let me grab my key. And you asked, or I mentioned, why is it important that both sides be flat and parallel to each other? And the overhead's going to be really good here. So the thing is that I want this to be the shoulder that goes up against the chuck. And I want this line right here where the veneer is to be absolutely on the perpendicular axis. What I found was many of the units that I had put together, it was off. And I had to spend quite a bit of time experimenting with how to get this to go in the right place so that the veneer line was in fact vertical. And that was a lot of pain. And I found that if I could just take the stock before cutting and get it flat and true, it just saved a lot of trouble. The guy doesn't mention that in the article, by the way. So this is really easy, and with any luck, this stuff is reasonably straight and reasonably centered. Turn on the lathe here.
That view just a little bit so they can see your tailstock or your tool nut too.
Okay.
So they can see where the tool is.
Absolutely. So
I want to stop here for just a second. And some of you will notice that traditionally, it's common to take a piece that's rough cut off the bandsaw and turn it into a cylinder as one of the first steps on the lathe. And that removes the rough high spots around the perimeter of the unit. I neglected to do that here. It worked out anyway, but sometimes it really is necessary, and sometimes you can get away skipping it.
Just nice and slow, just wanting to see, are we reasonably centered? Looks like I got it not too bad, a couple millimeters off, not bad. So I'm going to start with just a little parting tool, bring the speed up, and so there's my tenon. Let's check for size here. Yeah, it needs to be a little smaller, quite a bit. So that won't be too bad. What I found is if I take small slices with the parting tool, I get the effect I want, which maybe means I don't have it sharpened quite enough. There.
Whoops. The other thing I want to add.
So now.
The other thing I want to add about the parting tool, oh my goodness, I lost the whole thing. Where was I?
I think you've gone to the next one. Just back up.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. There you go. Nope, too far.
Let me start by talking about the.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mention here was I'm using a peeling cut, especially for the folks that are relatively new. I'm using a peeling cut. My parting tool is up high, and I'm not trying to just scrape and push straight into the axis. I'm peeling it like an apple peel would come off of the wood. Sorry for repeating, 30 seconds here.
So there's my tenon. What I found is if I take small slices with the parting tool.
There we go.
Now I'm good to go.
And here's the part, the other.
A lot of people talk about, well, they gave you two places to tighten the scroll chuck. Shouldn't you tighten both of them? And I'm thinking, it's a mechanical device. It's got to be the same height on both sides. But I don't know. Everybody's mileage may vary. All right. So now this part is where you start seeing the shape change. And from overhead, I want to divide the upper into two parts and mark it with a pencil. And that gives me my separation for here. Now what I'm going to try to do is keep that pencil line the whole way and preserve the width. The width is what I think kind of gives it it's a small piece. So if you take away the width, you're taking away a substantial aspect of what's left. Okay.
I've turned the speed up here.
Normally I don't, but I'm happy to, in the spirit of let's demonstrate it the right way.
Chris was reminding me to put on a face shield.
All right. So what I started doing were these very delicate push cuts. A little too high. and working my way inward. Like this. And what I found was this wood actually lends itself to a more aggressive style. So what I started doing was this.
These are also peeling cuts.
And I got this from Lyle Jameson, who was selling a turning.
I was referring to Lyle Jameson, who did a video and showed using push cut.
Yeah. So now I've taken away a lot of the waste, and now I can work on it with the more delicate push cut. So here, I've got a nice straight angle here, generally going for about 45 degrees. I want to get a thin lip around the candle, not too bad. I can see that I've got about a millimeter or so left here, and so I may need to change my angle a little bit. So let me go ahead and do that. Let me start here in the middle, because there's a little bit of a curve. And I really love the variable speed on this lathe. I don't know how I lived without a good variable speed lathe before. You know, I had a Delta, and it was one of those crank things that had the, not worm drive, but something drive in there. And it worked okay, but gosh, it just didn't have the control. All right, so what I want to do here is just pick up right before that pencil. Yes, just before the pencil mark. And just make a nice clean surface here. Looks like I lost my edge. Get it back. Now this should probably give me the lip thickness that I'm looking for. There we go. Yeah, there you go. So that kind of thickness there makes a good look. So here you can see I've generally got a smooth surface on this side. That's great. Now I'm going to work on the back. I am going to put some grooves in here. We'll talk about burning in a couple of minutes, but I want to do the back first. All right. So this is generally the same operation, just on the other side. I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive, getting these corners off. So I was finding that half of my time was going to making these delicate push cuts that weren't really making much progress. All right, so we've got this nice edge right here. I want to keep it. And there are times where I have to kind of clean up afterwards and come back and just pick up a little bit of that edge and take it off. We'll see how it goes here. And for those who are beginners, I'm kind of shifting my weight rather than just moving my my arm. Now I tend to go a little bit slower here when I start picking up the veneer, because I don't want to shatter it or create some situation I have to recover from. You can see when I get into that. Now, you can also see that I'm trying to blend from here, which is still a little bit rough, to here. And I've got to get down to where this third piece of wood is. So I've got to increase my angle a little bit to make that happen. So I'm going to move over a little bit so that the bevel angle on my bowl gouge will follow the direction I want it to go. It seems like on every wood turning video, somebody asks, well, what angle do you have the bevel on that bowl gouge down to? Whether it's Mike Mahoney or one of the AEW presenters. There you go. Yeah. So I want to be able to blend again from here down to there. And I want to keep quite a bit of this one. I'm going to keep it wide rather than narrow. And the answer is 55 degrees on the bowl gouge. All right, I'm just going to try to shave it, the whole thing from this way, starting at the corner. There. I was able to pick up the corner and leave that.
Gary, would you put that on hold a second? I think somebody's screwing around with the annotation, so I need to figure out how to get that off. Let me get in here and see if I can clean this. If anybody don't mess with the annotations, please. There we go. So don't anybody push any buttons that say annotation. Thanks.
Thanks. This really isn't one of the Madden football games. Don't draw on the screen and show the play button. All right.
So I think that's one of the nice things about the piece is the way the corner is preserved. It's kept sharp, and it's not a blended, rounded, kind of general round and round thing.
I'm going slowly here to leave us a clean.
There we go. And there's the glue line. Now I can come over here. And good. I need a little bit more here. This has got a little flat right there. Looks like it's a little bit flat here. I can do that. And
Interrupt 1 second.
yeah.
Okay, but because of this level arm mic and the mask and the hood, I'm going to just adjust it.
Sure.
Just see if you can hear me.
Absolutely.
We were trying to get the sound right. We had some problems with our microphones on this recording.
All right. I'm going to take another little slice here.
It came a little loud, so you may have to turn yours.
And then I'm going to leave a little bit crowd here at the base to be taken off with the tenant later. All right. A little bit more. There we go. That's the ticket. Oh, nice. Little angle to the outside. And I'd rather it go straight up and down on this piece than be flared at the bottom. Yeah, that's the ticket. Okay. So now I've got a general shape. I've got a little bit of waste here at the bottom where I can take it off when I part the bottom off. I've got a good thickness here where the candle goes in. And what I try to remember to do is come over here and just do a little scraping number on the inside so that when I reverse chuck it, it's exactly the same. Hear that?
That's just a flat screen.
Not exactly equivalent. So there we go. Good enough. What do we need to do there? All right. So now, here's the fun part. Okay. So the book, the magazine article, talks about putting some decorative grooves into the wood and doing so and then burning them. And I tried. I tried using a wire, and the problem with the wire on this angle is that it tends to pop out. It just does. And so that didn't go very well. So, oops. Pardon me. There we go. So the article said, okay, use a wire or use Formica. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to find a piece of Formica lately, but the stores don't carry it because the stores are carrying all these other countertop materials instead. I was able to get some samples of Formica online, and when they came, it was like, oh, happy day. And they were cheap. It's like 25 bucks a piece, 25 cents a piece, and they work out really, really well. So which camera are we on at the moment? Overhead, please. So here's a nice little 1/4 inch template, and you can see how I can position this top and bottom along the edge and at the top, and I can get 1/4 inch spacing. Or I could do 3/8 inch spacing. Just sat there and, worked out with a piece of paper and a ruler and that sort of thing. And so here's another one. This is the using the golden mean, and with an ascending pattern where it's small at the bottom and larger at the top. And this is the one that I've been using most, which is larger at the bottom and smaller at the top.
Smaller being a smaller gap.
Okay, so a couple marks on here. What I do is start with we're done taking big things off. All right, so what I start with here, slow it down, get it in position, get it nice and close, take a nice sharp pencil, and just push in. Just like that. And now I can take a skew and by the way, I tried this with a parting tool previously, and it was terrible. It would run all over the place, it would skip, and it would make the worst mess. And I figured out, oh, I'm presenting too wide a triangle to the wood, and I needed to have something much thinner. So that's how I decided to go to a skew.
And what I'm doing here is I'm lifting the handle to push the blade into the wood rather than just pushing straight.
Great. So now I can take my Formica and I can increase my speed way up. Until I get a burn. Burnt walnut. Just like that.
So with that, exciting demonstration so far. Let me see, are there any questions so far?
Okay. I don't see anything in the chat. Let me look and see if anybody has their. I don't see any hands raised either. If anyone wants to unmute yourself and just say something, you can do that.
What speed did you go on the burning of the Formica? I've been doing it and it seems like it takes forever, and yours just only touched it for 1 second and it was done.
Yeah, my top speed with that setting on that lathe is about 1750 RPM, and I just turn it all the way up. When I was marking with a pencil, I was about 400 RPM.
Thank you.
Is the laminated plastic in the middle between the two woods just purely decorative, or there was no other?
Yeah, it's actually walnut veneer rather than plastic. I probably wasn't clear enough about that before. And yes, it provides a color spacing in between and provides just a point of visual interest if you're looking at the bottom.
Hey, David Leonard had a question. David, you were unmuted.
I have a question.
No, Ted, let David.
Oh.
I just want to thank you for the tip on the Formica. I've never seen that before. That worked out really cool.
Yeah, it's a lot easier than the wire.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Ted, you want to say something?
Yes, when you were,
Oops, sorry. Go ahead. Ted, unmute yourself again.
Is it for me?
okay.
No, Ted would need to unmute
Oh,
himself.
Ted. Okay,
All
sorry.
right, I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
When you were doing that precise work on the angle, were you moving your body or your hands?
Mostly my body.
Good.
Certainly the hands were moving with me, but I really do rock side to side. But it's a relatively small piece altogether, so I'm not moving very far.
Okay.
Okay, Jim Gott, I guess it is, had a question. You want to unmute yourself?
I had a comment. You can also use regular playing cards for the same purpose.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Yeah, I saw a demo once where the guy did that, and they're easy, they're cheap, you can buy them anywhere, and you've got 52. It'll wear down the cards. It'll wear down the cards, but then you just make a new cut with scissors and keep on going, and then you put the deck away. I mean, it lasts a long time.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I bought 3 pieces for 25 cents a piece. And, it was my big thrill that day to get a package with 3 pieces of Formica in it.
You probably didn't notice, Gary, but Bill Raymond said in the chat that he has a cabinet shop with lots of plastic laminate he can share with us. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So anybody wants some, I'd suggest you keep Bill's name or send him your email or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else have a question or comment? If not, we'll go on. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Let's move on.
Okay.
Turn my feedback in. So now I've got my grooves, I've got my burn. I need to do a little cleanup over here because it got a little bit of tear out. Bottom came out nice, and this needs a bunch of sanding and things like that. Okay. So from here, let's do take off a little high. What I'm going to do is take off a little bit of the rim to remove the portion that has the tear out. I'll just do it really lightly. Just like that. Almost like shear scraping, if I knew how to do it. And I end up with pretty good. Let me try it again. And I'm trying to get trying to have this lip be parallel to the tabletop that it's going to sit on. Yeah, there you go. So now all that material that was torn out is gone. Yeah. So here it is sanding. And let me just show a little bit of this. I know sanding can be boring, but it really does come out looking pretty good once the grain is all kind of evened up from the sanding. And so even with just 100 grit sandpaper, you can start seeing the patterns here in the grain. And the grooves keep their shape because they were cut deep enough with the skew in the first place. One of the things that I like about this walnut that was in that gunstock purchase deal is that it's really pretty good wood. There are some checks and some cracks in some of the pieces, but really they're not bad at all. So to kind of save all of the different going up through the grits, let me do this really quick. Give me 60 seconds, and I'll bet we can have this in a situation to put a little finish on really quickly. Now I put the finish on while it's in the tenon. The instructions in the article had all kinds of changing the direction of the chucking, the direction of the piece. And given that I was trying to make a couple dozen of these, it a little more work than I was really hoping for. But I found if I did this, I could get it done pretty quick.
I keep a pile of cut sandpaper in order, so I can just reach over and grab the next one.
And here's 400. Great. Terrific. Now, looks like there's a little bit of tear out in here, but you know what? Just for the sake of the demo, I think I'm going to go forward anyway. So what I do, not everybody does this, but I'm one of those, let me take every possible precaution to make this thing look good. And I take rubbing alcohol. This is just standard 99% rubbing alcohol. And of course, it will help remove the sawdust without raising the grain, requiring more sanding. And it pulls a lot of the sawdust right out of the grain. And then I get a better finish out of it. There. And so it'll just look a little better. There. Okay, so we'll let that dry for just a sec. The other thing I would normally do here is put on sanding sealer, and then I'd let it dry and all that. So for the sake of the demo, I'm just going to skip this thing. And I'm going to get not an ad. I'm not getting any promotional benefit, but try. No. Doctor's Woodshop Pens Plus. I really like it as a friction polish. I also have the Shella Wax, which I like, but something just simple like this, I would go to this first thing. Now, there's a little bit of drying going on here. Yeah, coming out just fine. Just let it finish air drying, and it'll be just great. All I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 coats of friction polish on, and then we'll reverse chuck it, and I'll take off the tenon. Now, what I found was that, I don't know if you find this as well, when I go to put something like friction polish on, I end up with a mess. I end up with polish kind of everywhere. And I came up with a technique that worked for me, and I'm real interested to hear what other people are doing. Just to finish drying. A little bit of airflow. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. All right. So the other thing that was happening was that, especially with the grooves, the polish would get in the groove and then just stay there. And so what I realized was I could use the lathe speed to my advantage. So let me go ahead and let's give this a go. Overhead, nice and slow. What I want to do here get this spread. I do the top too. I did not forget the top. And then what I do is turn it up really as much as it'll go. And I use the combination of the speed for the friction, and I make sure to cover where the grooves are, because the grooves have stuff liquid in them, and it'll pop out. And I want it to pop out. I just don't want it to be on my clothes. I'll give it some nice polish here. And it comes out like that, which is exactly what I had in mind. So we'll give it a minute, cool down, and we'll put the second coat on. We'll do the same thing. Nice and slow. Now that it's already got a sealer on it, it won't absorb quite as much. Now I have to open the thing up again. I'm going to turn up the speed. And that way all of the stuff comes up out of the grooves. Woo! Hot. Very hot. But nice and clean. So there we have a finished looking piece. Go ahead and now we're going to put it back in expansion mode. And here's our bottom. You can see the lip over the tenon. You want to be careful here at this point because you don't want to put so much expansion pressure on it that you'll break it. Got a very thin lip at this point. So here, all I really need to do is take the tenon off and make a domed shape underneath. And I'm just going to take it in small stages with my parting tool. Some people do this with a skew or with a bowl gouge. I just haven't found I'm that good with it for some reason. With this particular material, anyway. Again, because it's got a light grip here, I don't want to put too much pressure over here on this side.
Again, this is a peeling cut.
I tend to use my parting tool where I learned to use a skew. And that is go up and over rather than straight in. And you can see that I'm already starting my inward progression to have an inward face, a dimple on the bottom. You see how my edge is. Yeah, that's good. I want to make sure that that's going to sit well on the table. I think I'm going to take just a little bit more off there. There. Now at this point, I will switch to not to a spindle gouge. There we go. Yeah. All right. So now we've got a good inward angle on there. That'll sit flat, not rock. Finish the foot. You can see the veneer that's in between. And at this point, it's ready for I know that the handle will fit because of the size of the Forstner bit used. And you've got a finished piece here. And at this point, I would do a little sanding on the bottom and sign it and put a date on it and all that and try to remember which woods it was. And then I would put it in a bag. And I found that in order to gift these, I needed a big enough bag that this shape size would go into the circumference of the bag opening had to be able to fit. So I ended up with larger bags than expected, these like 7 by 9 inch drawstring bags, but 7 by 7 gave me 14 inches of circumference for this to go through, which is really what I needed. It wouldn't work with something smaller. But these ended up going out, got some nice compliments on them, and that's the making of a tea light.
So,
Okay, Gary, we do have one question in the chat.
yeah,
How deep do you drill the hole for the candle holder?
1 inch. And your mileage may vary. It depends on what glass candle holder you buy. The recommendation from Bill was basically drill a 1 inch hole in a 2 inch thick 4x4 square. And that worked fine for the glass that I was using.
Recess, why didn't you finish the bottom?
Just in the interest of time in making the video.
Any other questions, or someone wants to raise their hand or ask anything directly? Okay, I'm not well, David, did you have something?
No, I just want to thank you for the very nice demonstration.
Yeah,
He's
sure.
not quite done. A little bit more info for you all.
A little bit more to bend your ear about.
Good.
Okay, go ahead.
Cool. So having a waste block for me was really good during the glue up. As I mentioned at the beginning, the veneer would want to curl from the moisture of the glue. And so I was using my lathe as a press, and I would have the upper piece in the chuck, and then I would put the veneer on it, and then I would put the waste block on, and then I would move up the tailstock and use it as a press. And that worked out really well. And then, like I talked about in the video, I used a scraper on the inside in order to get the inside perfectly matched to the tenon that was cut. And then we already talked about Formica. I talked a little bit about the golden mean, and some of you do that and some of you don't, and some of you know what it is and some don't. But the bottom line is that it has to do with the ratio of the progression. It's not just a number, it's the progression of numbers and how they relate to each other. And what I did was I used that on 1/16 of an inch and said, okay, 4/16 of an inch, and then this many 1/16 of an inch, and then that many 1/16 of an inch. And it allowed me to, or an eighth, starting with an eighth of an inch, it allowed me to create that separation that I thought looked really pretty cool. These were the cardboard templates I made, and it's just me sitting at the kitchen table with a ruler and a pen and a pair of scissors. And the cardboard itself is the back of a pad of paper. It wasn't any big deal. And the ones on the right are those golden mean ones, and they kind of go greater than, meaning, you know, bigger on the left and smaller on the right, and the other one's the other direction. And by having these and having that little tab on the upper left, it meant that I could put it up against the corner, that outer corner of the tea light, and know that I had the right registration. So I was kind of perfectly positioned. So this just helped me. I mean, your mileage may vary. You may prefer to freehand it or just do 1/4 inch separation between your grooves. Talked about this already. The audio came out a little bit muted. It was Doctor's Woodshop Pens Plus for the finish. And I did try one of the units I tried the 3-wheel buffing system, and it just didn't come out as glossy. And that's just kind of the nature of buffing, I think. But remember, I was making 24 of these, and I didn't want to spend an arm and a leg. And so, but I did have to buy some supplies, right? So the candle holders came in packs of 18, and I was making 24 to 25 of these, so I bought 2 boxes. And the candles came in, you can get them in a million different configurations. You can buy them at the grocery store even. But I included 2 candles with each gift, just because I thought, well, you know, you could use one, and then, you know, you've got another one there. And if you don't actually have your own supply, it's no big deal. And they're just so cheap. You know, I think that they were like cents each one. That'll be on the next slide. I did talk about the gift bags, and I needed that bigger opening, and I used some paper, and I made the equivalent of what a 7x7 opening was, a 6x6, 2 6-inch lengths, such that if you open them up, you had 12 inches of circumference, and the unit wouldn't go in. And that's how I ended up with a 7-inch opening on the bag. And then, you know, because I couldn't take them to anybody, I couldn't take them to my family or take them to my coworkers, I had to buy shipping boxes, and I had to pay for shipping. So that's where so much of the cost came in. So let's look at what the costs turned out to be, right? So I figured out from that purchase of gunstock blanks that each 4x4 was about 40 cents. And the maple veneer, because you buy them in sheets of 3 that are 12x12, and based on the cost of that, each 3x3 piece was about 30 cents. And the other wood, I don't know where it came from, so whatever. The tea light holder was a little less than $1. Each tea light candle was about 13 cents. The drawstring gift bag in quantity, right? Because I was buying, I think, 20 in a pack or something. They were only 80 cents each. So that wasn't bad. And they looked really nice. The shipping box I bought a 25 pack of those, and they just came in, you know, shrink wrapped, Amazon one day. And those are about 32 cents a piece. And so my total cost before shipping was about $3. And that kind of hit my sweet spot for what the cost of making a whole bunch of things, because really what I'm giving, what I felt I was giving anyway, was of my time, not so much of my ability to buy parts. And if I was going to just give gifts based on money, I would give, you know, Harry and David gift baskets or wine or beer or something like that. So anyway, it didn't really cost all that much when it came to things. So, and I had a lot of fun doing it. Thanks for letting me share it.